everyone, it's Lauren Alvin with Addabop Dog and Puppy Training. It's going to be one of those Training Tip Tuesdays, a big long training lecture, Training Tip Lecture Tuesday. I have to say this a lot, unfortunately. Dog training is an unregulated industry. That means any rando, any dingus, any well-meaning person can call themselves a dog trainer and take money for it, or get a television show and do things to dogs with little to no repercussions, legally or professionally. We're working on it. But being that that's the case right now, there's still a lot of misinformation and myths that are unfortunately pervasive and have unfortunately made a significant comeback in the last decade or so, thanks in no small part to reality television shows. Just leave it at that. But we know better. We've known better for 60, 70 years now. And people who call themselves professionals have no excuse not to know better. Either they are so ignorant of the profession that they're saying that they're experts in that they don't even know that they've been, people with PhDs and masters in this have been spoon feeding us science for decades, or they know and they still choose to go directly against best practices in our profession. That's a whole other video. But what I'm getting at is there's these myths that still exist, and I do not blame or judge dog owners for thinking that they're true, or for just having them as a part of their conception of their dog floating around in their brain. You're a dog owner. You're not a trainer. You're not an expert in people who call themselves experts, and you shouldn't have to be, which is why this profession should be regulated. You shouldn't have to know more than the person who's trying to tell you what to do to know if they're full of bull honky or not. So I'm not shaming anyone, I'm not judging anyone. If you have held any of these preconceived notions, I'm simply saying, not the case. Thanks for asking. It makes me angry that owners have to know more than they should. They're just looking for help. But anyway, there are things that influence your dog's behavior, and your cat's behavior, and your cockroach's behavior, and your hawk's behavior, and your dolphin's behavior, and your spouse's behavior. There are things that do not. And those things were either completely fabricated or extrapolated, bad extrapolations from really bad science that has since been debunked for decades. So, what does influence behavior? All behavior is the result of genetics and environment and the way they interact. I've also added in early experiences, early puppyhood experiences, and learning history. So genetics can influence behavior in a number of ways. I'm sure you're aware, in humans at least, we have all sorts of studies that say there is some hereditary or genetic factor in addiction, alcoholism, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. All of these things have at least part of the puzzle lies in a genetic factor. But the other part of that is having the right environment for that genetic factor to blossom, if you want to put it that way, or be switched on in a particular manner. So genetics can influence the way you perceive your environment. I'm 5'2". My genetics have dictated to some extent my height, and my height dictates a lot of the way that I perceive my environment. If I'm out shopping with my husband and he wants to show me something, I'm gonna grab something quick. He picks it up and he's just like, hey, look at this, isn't this cool? He's just handing it to me. To me, this used to really tick me off until I realized he's going like this, look at this, isn't this cool? And he's all up in my space and I'm just like, what the heck are you doing? Chill out, dude. He's just showing it to me. But the way I perceive it, because I am at this level to him, is right in my face. My last video was about little dogs. You might understand what that feels like. Genetics can also influence your behavior. There's a particular gene that turns on a particular other gene that creates more, it's either rods or cones, and I'll look up the study if you're interested in it. But this gene affects the eye, and it makes the eyes have some sort of physical thing that perceives motion more intensely. This gene is often found in border collies. So it would make sense with dogs who have this gene that they would be more sensitive to peripheral movement or to running squirrels, or to get really agitated and like OCD about sheep that aren't all together, if they perceive movement at a higher frame rate, if you think of it that way, it's more intense. It makes sense that that little genetic quirk would influence their outward behavior. And if that genetic quirk is paired with an early puppyhood experience of a whole lot of squirrels teasing them, or getting attacked by a dog, and then they're really perceptive and anxious around the sight of, you know, another dog in the distance, then it makes sense that that dog would develop reactivity. So genetics can influence it. Early experiences, this can also be paired with epigenetics. Certain genes get switched on or off in certain orders, even when the dog's in the womb. Even humans and mice are in the womb. Early puppyhood experiences can also refer to what goes on in the socialization window, which is generally from birth to about 14 to 16 weeks. And that's where their little jello puppy brains are kind of setting into the mold. And if during that period, puppies experience elevators and motorcycles and people with beards and people in wheelchairs and people with purple hair and people with sunglasses and people with different colored skin and people who walk funny and with walkers and everything else, then those get categorized into normal. As long as they have a good experience with it, it's normal. That's cool. Things that they don't experience in that jello brain period are other. And if the other things align, some dogs would perceive other as not cool. Some dogs, if the genetics and learning history and environment align, would perceive, oh, what is that? Oh, that's cool, all right, I'll just move on with my life, it's not a big deal. And that's sort of their temperament or their personality would dictate how this one little cog could influence their behavior in adulthood or even puppyhood. Learning history. Even after that socialization window shuts, that's not to say we can't teach dogs things. We can teach goldfish things. An 18-week-old puppy isn't beyond hope. A 19-year-old dog isn't beyond hope. But if their brain has a really well-traversed neural pathway of whatever behavior pattern we're talking about, if every time they've seen someone with a beard, a car backfired for, 6 years, every single time, beard, terrible noise, beard, terrible noise. They've got a really strong association, a really well-traveled, intense neural pathway for that stimulus and that behavior chain of beard, freak out. Then we're working against a big, long learning history. And if we want to build a new learning history, we're going to have to tip the scales gradually because we've got a really big one to work against. If a dog has been practicing jumping up, they get excited and they jump on someone for 2 years, then we're working against 2 years of that being really effective versus a 10-week-old puppy who's been jumping on people for 10 weeks less since he started walking. Then we simply go, oh no, we're not doing that one anymore, and this is the one that works better. Learning history influences behavior. Dogs do what works for dogs. They do what gets them good stuff. They also do what helps them avoid bad stuff. Working with the good stuff is faster and more effective, and is best practices. Environment. Nina's a really good girl. She's the best dog in the whole wide world. She's really good at sits, she's really good at downs, she's really good at nose targeting. She's got a whole bunch of behaviors in her repertoire. I would not take her to a squirrel parade next to a river filled with squeaky toys and fireworks going off and expect her to be able to succeed. That environment is not something where she's going to do well. If you have a dog who's profoundly reactive or aggressive towards other dogs, but they're wonderful at home, the environment's going to influence their behavior. If they never see another dog in their whole life, then there's never going to be an issue for the rest of their life. It's not really a practical solution, but the environment influences the behavior as well. So like I said, it's hard to do backwards. They all influence each other. Genetics will influence to some degree their early life experience. Their early life experience is part of their learning history and will influence their learning history as they get older. Learning history depends upon the environment. If they never practice something they can actually do because they're always in stressful or over-arousing environments, then the learning history is, chopped off wherever they finish. Their environment going way back, the circle of life here, epigenetically, can influence their genes. And their environment will influence which genes get turned on and which little tweak suddenly comes out somewhere that you didn't expect. These are things that do influence behavior. They do. These are things that are scientific fact. Things that do not influence in behavior. You're the owner, the mom or the dad's attitude, moral fortitude, strength, or alpha-ness. There's a lot of air quotes in this half of the video. A dog who jumps up is a dog who's figured out that jumping up is effective. It's not a dog whose owner has weak moral character or isn't enough of a leader or has babied them or has a codependent relationship with them. Dogs do what works for dogs. That's not to say they're selfish, it's to say that they're sentient beings who make decisions based on the outcomes of their behavior. And it's not fair and it's not accurate to say, you're the problem, dog owner. It's because you need to buck up and be more alpha and then just have these alpha waves float on the ether towards your dog and solve all of their behavior problems. It's not the case. Behavior problems are no one's fault. Behavior problems arise from all sorts of influences, and it's not anyone's fault. It's not fair or accurate to say, you're the problem. Loving them too much. There's no such thing as a spoiled dog. I truly believe that. Dogs are put on this earth to be loved. That's their whole purpose, as far as I'm concerned. And you can't love your dog too much. You can reinforce behaviors that you would rather go extinct, but again, if it's not a problem for you that the dog jumps on your lap, then it's not a problem. If it's not a problem for you that your dog doesn't like to be around strangers and you're just gonna go live in a cave in the middle of the woods for the rest of your life, then it's not a problem. As long as your dog is happy and safe and not hurting themselves or others, if you're happy with it, it's fine. You can't love your dog too much. Letting them on the bed or out the door first or on the couch. This comes back to the alphaness. No, dogs do what works for dogs. They like sitting on comfortable surfaces and they can get to it and it feels good when they do it, they're gonna keep doing it. If they're excited to go outside and you're taking too long to open the door, and a really effective way to get outside is to smush your face into it, they're gonna keep doing that. It's not because they're testing you or trying to take over the world or anything, they're just dogs and they're doing dog stuff. Their appearance. Nina. I have my pit bull here. Genetics can influence behavior, absolutely. But you cannot tell a dog's genetics from looking at them. You can hypothesize that a dog's behavior might be the result of a genetic quirk and say, oh, it makes sense. This dog chases my toddlers around and nips them on the ankles. It's a border collie. Oh, okay, that makes sense. That's not it. I mean, your kids aren't safe. The dog isn't doing this because it feels good. The dog is doing it because they're upset and anxious and over-aroused or overstimulated by the kids moving around. We need to work on that. But saying that dog is black and white and has medium to long hair, it's probably going to nip kids in the ankle, isn't accurate. You get the individual that you get. And there's no guarantees based on appearance who that individual is going to be. When you have that individual, then you can say, this is that individual, and this is what's going on with them, and here's what we can do to help them. But you can't assume that because someone has green eyes and red hair, they're going to be alcoholics, or any other racist stereotype. I'm not going to start listing off. It doesn't work both ways. Human food. Again, loving your dog too much, giving them good stuff. There's just food. Dogs eat dead stuff, and some dogs eat poop. They're not going to be like, ooh, that's human food, that's the greatest stuff ever, because they think everything's great. Feeding your dog human food isn't going to ruin them. It might mean that you're reinforcing behaviors that you don't actually want to stick around, but that just goes back to learning history. That's not a matter of human food. It's a matter of more valuable reinforcers that you are withholding for things that you actually want or doling out for things that you don't actually want. Packs. Knowing their place. Alpha. See, air quotes. My fingers are going to be sore. The popular culture conception of dominance is completely and utterly incorrect. It has no basis in fact. It is based on really crappy science from the 30s through the 70s, which has since been taken back by the very scientists who published it and thoroughly debunked since then. It was based on observing unrelated wolves in captivity and saying, wow, these wolves are really fighting a lot. This must be what they do in the wild. Therefore, this must be what dogs do. Now, it's not what wolves do in the wild, and our dogs aren't wolves anyway, and they're domesticated. It's not, no. Dogs are not pack animals. Dogs are not little Hitlers trying to take over the world. Dogs are not concerned with who goes out the door first, or if you spit in their food, or if you're making eye contact when you eat crackers before they eat, or any of this garbage. Don't worry about it. Energy. This one really deserves air quotes, because this is pretty much there's no definition for it. Dogs are really good observers of body language, which is part of how they became domesticated. They're really good at observing us and figuring out our patterns and figuring out where we leave the food and figuring out which ones of us are safe. But that's not energy. That's not a mystical force that you exude which influences your dog's behavior. That's your dog watching you and creating a learning history based on their genetic ability to read humans. Better than humans read humans, better than chimpanzees read humans, and way better than wolves read humans. It's not energy. It's just not. I don't even know how to, that's not even a thing. I don't even know how to break that down, because there's nothing to break down. It's not your energy. Dogs learn things the same way anyone else learns things, and they're also really good at reading us. That's what it comes down to. Lack of leadership. Again, dogs are not little Hitlers. Dogs do not form rigid linear hierarchies with other dogs or with wolves, and certainly not with humans. Leadership is such a nebulous term. There are still some trainers who use it to mean something more benign, but generally it refers to being an alpha over your dog, which again has no basis in fact. Dogs don't need leaders. They need to understand what you want from them, and they need to understand why they should do that and why it works for them. So they need to build a learning history to do what you want them to do, and that's not because you're standing up straight, being alpha, and marching around and using the right tone of voice or speaking in German instead of English. It's because that's what they've learned. They've learned that these behaviors create these consequences, and this is the behavior that I'm going to offer next time to get what I want out of it. That's not energy, that's not leadership. So I think this is the longest Training Tip Tuesday I've ever done. I should give you a little shot of Nina just to pay off here.
Hey Nina, you've been so patient. Yes you have. You're so good. You're so good girl. Yes you are, so good.
Thank you for watching. We've got Games Night coming up October 28th. I've got all sorts of events in October. The 7th is at Pet Value on the north end. The 14th is in Frederick with Trendsetter Treats. I don't think I have anything the week after that. But then the Costume Parade is the 28th. Games Night's the 27th. All sorts of stuff going on. And then we've got the mini holiday classes and the It's a Little Tricky courses in November and December. Blah, 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 blah. It's all on the website. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you like these long form ones, or if you'd rather just see me do something easy with Nina. Sometimes it's healthy for me to get this off my chest because, like I said, it burns my buns that this is still something that's going around, and it shouldn't, because dogs deserve better and dog owners deserve better. and we've got better. So I'll keep on fighting the good fight. Take care. Let me know if you have any questions or requests. You're all awesome. Bye-bye.